Today, we're diving into one of the biggest mysteries in all of science: consciousness itself. A really fascinating new theory suggests the key isn't hiding in our brain cells, but, get this, in the very rhythm of our thoughts.
I want you to think about something for a second. You know that constant, subtle hum of activity that's always going on inside your head?
What if that isn't just background noise? What if it's the actual engine creating your thoughts, your memories, your entire sense of self? Well, that's the wild and provocative idea coming from MIT neuroscientist Dr. Earl Miller. See, Dr. Miller is proposing that brainwaves aren't just some byproduct of thinking. Nope. He thinks they are the active driving force behind it. This idea completely shifts our perspective on how the mind works. At the very heart of this is a new way of looking at cognition. He sees it as the brain's incredible ability to organize itself on a massive scale. And how does it do it? Through these oscillating electrical waves, neurons firing and then going quiet, over and over in specific patterns that basically knit the whole cortex together into what we experience as consciousness. Now, this idea really challenges that old metaphor you've probably heard a million times: the brain as a computer. What this theory suggests is that our brain isn't a digital machine at all. It's something way, way more dynamic. Okay, so here's the fundamental difference, right? A digital computer is super rigid. It thinks in zeros and ones. If it wants to learn something new, you literally have to rewire it. But the brain? It's an analog system. It uses continuous waves, which makes it unbelievably fast and flexible. It can sculpt information on the fly without having to physically change its connections for every single thought. An idea this big doesn't just pop up overnight. It actually came from decades of research. Back in the 2000s, Miller's lab figured out the prefrontal cortex was kind of like the brain's director. By 2007, they were linking different wave speeds to specific jobs. All this work eventually revealed this amazing organized pattern of waves across the brain, and that led them to formalize their spatial computing theory in 2023. So how does this whole thing actually work? I mean, if brainwaves are the engine, how do they steer? Well, this next part is really the core of the theory, and it's kind of like a symphony of thought. Probably the best way to picture this is to think of brainwaves as traffic signals. They're constantly managing this huge flow of information coming in from your senses, and at the same time, managing the goals coming from your own mind. They direct what gets your attention and what just gets ignored. And in this symphony, we've got two main players. First, you have these slower beta waves. Think of these as carrying your goals from the top down, what you're trying to accomplish. Then you've got the faster gamma waves, which carry all the sensory data from the bottom up, everything you're seeing and hearing. The beta waves act like a conductor, telling the gamma waves, hey, pay attention to this piece of information, not that one. And as Dr. Miller himself puts it, this constant dance of starting and stopping, of excitation and inhibition is what organizes the brain. It's not chaos up there. It's an incredibly structured system. And he says it's this very organization that leads directly to our conscious experience. Let's make this really practical for a second. Let's say you're trying to remember what you ate for lunch yesterday. Your brain sets that as a goal. Now, to access that memory, it momentarily dials down those controlling beta waves in just the right part of your brain. That opens up a little window for the faster gamma waves to rush in, retrieve that sensory info, the sight, the taste, and boom, the memory just pops into your head. Okay, but what's the evidence for all this? Well, one of the most compelling pieces of proof comes from something we can all understand. What happens when we switch consciousness off completely, like with anesthesia? So, if consciousness is really this beautiful symphony of coordinated brainwaves, what do you think happens when the music stops? The answer is pretty profound. When the music of the brain stops, so does the mind. Anesthetics work by breaking down this coordinated rhythm, and as soon as they do, consciousness just fades away. So what's actually happening? Well, researchers found that these drugs basically throw the brain's waves into total disarray. The frequencies get pushed out of alignment, the waves become disorganized, and the communication between different parts of the brain just fails. The system can't perform those crucial analog computations anymore, and just like that, consciousness is lost. So, let's zoom out a bit. What does all of this mean for how we understand who we are? If our thoughts are just patterns of waves, what does that say about the self? Dr. Miller argues that what we actually experience as consciousness is just the very tip of the iceberg.
Most of the brain's heavy lifting, all those wave-driven computations, are happening automatically, way beneath the surface. Our consciousness is just the high-level oversight.
And it has two main jobs. First, it monitors what the rest of the brain is up to. It's kind of like it's keeping score. And second, it uses all that information to plan for the future and, this is crucial, to step in and override a bad decision before we make it. So it's both an observer and a controller.
And that's the real beauty of Miller's theory. It's this single, elegant idea that ties everything together. It totally flips the old view on its head. That electrical noise in the brain we used to think was just a problem to be filtered out, turns out that noise is the signal. Consciousness emerges directly because of these rhythms.
And that leaves us with a pretty profound final thought. What if who we are, our personality, our memories, our whole sense of self, is less about the fixed physical wiring of our brain and more about the beautiful, ever-shifting dance of its rhythm? An identity written not in stone, but in waves.